Good morning, good morning, good morning. Today we're talking about love letters, and Adair is going to be walking us through a flip. This much and more on This Week in Real Estate.
Hi, I'm Jeff Belomo with Belomo & Associates. People come to our estate planning and elder law firm in all phases of life. We believe in education and teaching a client what they need to know and what to expect before it happens through our free educational workshops. We understand that estate planning is more than documents. It is about relationships. At Belomo & Associates, we build relationships and we educate our clients.
Good morning, Ken Pitts. How are you, sir?
Good morning, Paul. How are you?
Hey, it is Wednesday. Things are great. For whatever form the holidays are going to take, I'm actually looking forward to them this year.
What are you, an isolationist? It's the way things are going. It's just going to be, us sitting at home with a TV dinner the way things are going.
That's what most of my holidays have been anyway. So welcome to the club. Now we'll have to see.
Hey, I hear we're gonna talk about love letters today.
Yeah, we are. We're going to talk about love letters. So let's define what a love letter has to do with real estate. No, we're not courting your wife again. Love letters. What's happening with buyers are, let me back up just a little bit. Multiple offers are becoming the rule, especially on those well-priced and homes that are in really good condition. We're seeing, it's not unheard of to see 20 plus offers on a house. So what buyers are doing is they're submitting what's called a love letter. They're explaining how much they love the house, why they want it, and why their offer should be accepted. Here's the problem. It presents a real issue for the real estate agents involved in that those love letters could very well violate fair housing laws. And it puts the agent at risk.
So these love letters have been around for as long as I've been in the business. I've had people who would write letters to sellers trying to encourage them to take their offer, even in markets that were not, crazy like this, where it was multiple offer. They may be coming in at a lower sales price, but pulling on the heartstrings to say, hey, could you please accept our offer? We love this house for these reasons, kids, yard for the dog, whatever. So how are they crossing the line now? How has it become more of a fair housing issue?
It's become a fair housing issue because familial status. So when we start talking about the kids, that goes to familial status. That says, hey, we've got kids. We are a family unit. Familial status is a protected class. We can envision having the family over for Christmas or for holidays. If you say Christmas, that's a religious issue. That's a protected class. And what the fair housing gurus are afraid of is that could have either a positive or a negative, either conscious or unconscious bias on the part of the seller.
So a seller sees this letter, sees, there's a family of 4, they have a dog. All of a sudden, they're taking in factors into their decision-making that are protected class factors that another buyer could say, hey, you discriminated against me because you picked somebody with a family over me who didn't, or something along those lines. Is that the line of reasoning that they're looking at?
I think so, yes. So look at it this way. If I send a picture of me and my family or let's say a family of color submits a picture and their offer is not accepted, did that picture play a role in the decision-making process? And again, the seller may or may not be subject to, but the real estate agents definitely could. And
yeah, because if the seller's going to see it, it's likely coming through the hands of the realtors.
Yes. And so what the National Association of Realtors is advising is, if you're a buyer's agent, don't send a love letter. Certainly don't participate in the creation of one. And for the listing agent, don't allow the seller to see it.
Interesting. For as long as they've been around, I had never seen it through that lens before. So it's kind of interesting to see that they're going this route.
Hey, it's getting crazy, and fair housing is becoming a really hot topic right now for a variety of reasons. I don't think I've seen a real estate post gone a week without seeing some sort of real estate post on fair housing and equity. What's the right word? Again, taking the protected classes out of the buying and selling process, which is what fair housing was meant to do. So it still lingers in very subtle forms, but it still lingers.
Pretty interesting. I just would have, I would have never expected that, given the fact that, and I know some of the people I've written loans for definitely put those letters together and passed them through. So it'll be interesting to see if that trend stops now with with this starting to crop up more as a fair housing issue.
It's not going to stop until a real estate agent gets sued and loses. Because it's still incumbent upon the plaintiff to say that, their offer was not accepted because of this issue. And the interesting thing is I found this article in Realtor Magazine, which in the same issue included a story of a couple who beat out 23 other offers, and the buyer swore it was because of the love letter. And they used the love letter to establish that emotional connection with the seller, pointing out what they perceived was the similarities. Fair housing says no. The offer stands on its own.
Yeah. Tell you what, it's interesting times. It's really interesting to see how a market like we're in, which we've been talking about for months, which is low in inventory and heavy on buyers, creating all these super competitive situations, how it can bring to the forefront a practice that's been going on for years as being a fair housing issue.
Well, take it to an extreme. Look at redlining. It went on for years with government blessing. The government was driving it.
Yeah.
And back in 1960s, or I think it actually 1973 or so, the procedure was changed because of fair housing. That's what drove the creation of fair housing, really. So it's one of the last vestiges. Hey, 16 years ago, when I was taking my How to Be a Real Estate Agent, they talked about how to write a love letter, how to establish that emotional bond.
Yeah. Interesting times.
So actually, I'm kind of glad to see it. Like I said, the offer needs to stand on its own without, it needs to be a business type decision.
Yeah, I'm taken aback by it, but I guess I get it. I understand it. It just is, it's interesting to see that come up as a fair housing issue. But, as you explained it, it really can be.
Oh, I think it definitely can be, especially if you're getting two offers that are side by side, the same on paper. Which do you take? Then all of a sudden that little love letter becomes a deciding factor. Who's got the greatest, tearjerker story is what decides. If you're the loser, and that's not what our offer was supposed to be about.
And I don't know if you remember this, that this had come up before when the market was really tough for sellers. There was this trend out there where people were kind of putting their house up, and they were gonna give like a discounted price for the person that wrote the best essay as to why they should receive the house. And they were getting these tremendous discounts, or they were in some cases giving the house away and taking a loss and doing taking a deduction off of that back when you could do things like that. And that was one of the, and I remember now that the fair housing came up in that. Like people would, they would put their house up for sale, for example, and sell lottery tickets, but you had to write an essay with it too, you know, and stuff like that. And, you know, that was all deemed to be a fair housing violation. You know, it was a way that people tried to creatively sell a house, and it created some problems for them. So I guess this was kind of in line to happen. It just got exacerbated by this market, and now we see it happening.
Again, I don't know if the consumer is subject to fair housing, but the real estate agents and the brokerages definitely are. And by participating in that, they're really putting their licenses and their fortunes at risk, because they are coming down with some major steep fines. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars. We're not talking $500.
Fair housing, no picnic to mess with.
It's, you know, that's not an argument I care to get into.
Yeah. Interesting stuff.
So let's see, what other cool headlines have we got real quick. Mortgage forbearances are coming down. People are coming out of forbearances. Now, you had an interesting story about forbearances and the refi rush.
Yeah, it's interesting. People are coming out of their forbearances and they're, you know, contacting lenders like myself to do the refis, but they were never given the full instructions when they went into their forbearance, partially because the instructions weren't there at the very beginning of the forbearance process. And I have to break it to them that they have to get 3 mortgage payments in before I can refinance their property. So I got a handful of people that finished up their forbearances in August. And now we're getting ready to put them into application because they had to get their 3 monthly mortgage payments in to meet the requirements that Fannie Mae put up. But you know, for a lot of folks who went into the forbearance early, they were not given that instruction because that instruction didn't exist. That came about in May, where they just, you know, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac decided how they were going to handle the you know, people coming out of forbearance and what requirements they were going to have to meet before they could refinance or purchase a new home.
And it's one of the things I remember talking about. If you can at all avoid the forbearance, don't do it. It's going to come back to bite you somewhere. Don't know where, because they're still writing the rules, but it's going to come back to bite you.
Nothing's for free.
That's right. Oh, along that line, according to Black Knight, the number of homes in that are 30 days or 90 days past due but not in foreclosure, those numbers are coming down, thankfully. So we talked about this, I think, a little bit a week or so ago, that the foreclosure crisis that everybody was anticipating, and I plead guilty to that. I was thinking I was going to have a banner year in short sales and foreclosures. May not be happening.
Yeah, there is still one statistic that's going to be out there for a little while to evaluate, and that ties back to what we just talked about, which is forbearance. There is going to come a point where folks who went into forbearance aren't going to have forbearances anymore, and then the question is going to be, can they still make their mortgage payment? Are they in a working class of folks that are still being affected by COVID? And then a lot of their fortunes are going to be tied to whether a secondary stimulus package comes out, and then that'll determine for some folks whether they end up losing their house or they're able to hold on to it for a while longer until, you know, the economy shapes back up.
And that whether a stimulus package comes out and what form it takes is definitely dependent on who wins the election, what happens in the Senate, and what happens with the White House.
Yeah, and I believe that if our current president is reelected, there's probably a stimulus package just waiting to go out. I think the Republicans, you know, the Senate's really controlling whether that happens or doesn't happen. And if he's reelected and the Senate retains a majority, that package is ready to go. I think that they've kind of held off, and you know, it's just opinion on the outside looking in. I think they held off on passing any kind of stimulus package because they want to make it easy on the Democrats if they take over. You know, it's political, and you know, and sometimes politics hurts people. And, we've needed this stimulus plan probably since August. And it's a shame that it's kind of become a political football that's, being played with. And meanwhile, people are struggling, but hopefully we'll see some kind of relief soon for folks that are still being affected by COVID.
Well, let's see. In Pennsylvania, the election is what, on the 2nd? Is that right? No. What day is the election on?
I believe it's
The 3rd, November 3rd.
3rd.
And they'll be counting votes up until the 6th. So that means by November 8th, 9th, we should hopefully know who's going to win the election.
Yeah, I think today was if I'm not mistaken, today was the last day for early voting. And they are saying that they've had record output. I mean, we're having a lot of people vote. So it'll be really interesting to see what the final vote count itself is, let alone who wins. But I'm curious to see how many people actually vote in this election.
Yeah, I think there's definitely, I think the headlines are already out there that we're seeing a record number of votes being cast. Let's see, rental markets are being squeezed. The unemployed typically are the renters. So the tenants are having a hard time making their payments. The landlords are having a hard time making their mortgage payments because, well, let's see, collections are down to about 90%. So, that's good. But again, renters are being affected by lack of inventory. There's just not enough rental properties out there. Whether you're talking about single family homes, duplexes, quads, or major apartment buildings with 20 plus units.
Yeah, that's why you're in the basement of your parents' house. That's
No, I'm in the
that's where you
basement
end
of
up.
my house. I'm paying the mortgage on my basement. Thank you.
Yeah. Speaking generally, I'm saying that's where the young people end up having to go back to. I mean, it's just the rental market is brutal. The prices in the rental side of things still remain high, although they seem to be leveling off a little bit, partly due to the fact that we're in this COVID crisis. But I would suspect that once that's over and a lot of that younger sector is back to work, that rents are probably going to continue to rise for a while. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough finding housing out there right now. It's not easy.
I know in Lancaster City, the major complaint for investors, either flippers or landlords, is even in the neighborhoods where you could pick up properties for a song, those prices are getting ridiculously high. And, the acquisition costs are high, which is driving rental prices up. So, and with the prices being so high, if we ever reassess, if they did a reassessment right now, property taxes would go through the roof. And the municipalities and the government, they like high assessed values because that's high property taxes. But it does put a squeeze on affordable housing.
And it really dampens the demand for investment properties from investors, because if they can't make money on it, they're not going to invest. And when you have housing prices going up so high and it starts to outstrip the affordability of the renter, that's how the market levels itself out. I mean, it'll eventually dampen investor demand, and that'll help level out the market a little bit, but we got a ways to go before that happens.
And to a large extent, we're still seeing the only investment properties out there are ones from folks that are in a have to sell situation. The divorce, the probates, the Medicare or the Medicaid folks. And COVID is taking its toll on the unemployed. There was a short article that said those that were being furloughed, they're becoming permanently unemployed because businesses are shuttering, where they put up temporary shutters. Now they're boarding them up, and those properties those businesses are closed and gone forever. Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely that whole K-shaped recovery. There's a lower side to that K that's not doing well, and hopefully they'll get a stimulus plan out here to affect that part of the market.
Well, one way or another, we should know in about 2 weeks. We can have 2 weeks.
Yeah. It's coming.
'Cause I bet you there, in one form or another, as you mentioned, there's a plan just waiting in the wings to see who's gets passed.
Mhm. Yeah, in a few weeks, once we know who's president, we'll know what the stimulus plan is going to be.
Yep.
For the second part. Yeah.
Okay, coming up in our next segment, Adair Whitmer from Ambiance by Adair is going to walk us through a house that's being flipped and what they're doing it the right way. They're bringing in the stager and the interior designer up front. So stay tuned for Adair's report, and Mr. Pitts, we will talk to you next week.
Hey, I'm looking forward to Adair's report. So, and we'll see you next week.
All right, take care, bud.
Bye-bye.
So hi Paul, this is our little walkthrough of a flip project, and you will see that it's very much a work in progress. Elaine, show them. Lovely work in progress there. All right, so a lot of flippers do not use an interior designer, but in this case they did. They decided they wanted to get some different perspective and maybe some ideas for some changing it up and doing a little something different. So we're going to show you what we suggested. So you'll see as you look around here, my big thing is, you know, I know realtors appreciate things being neutral, a neutral color palette, but I would really like to encourage flippers especially to not be afraid of a little bit of color. We put a nice color on the walls here. It's a Grecian Ivory. It's a Sherwin-Williams color. It's got a little bit of density, but it's still a neutral color, and I think what it does is it really warms up the space. And it is a compliment to the flooring that they did a lovely job picking out the flooring. I had nothing to do with the flooring, but they did a nice job with the flooring. And you'll notice that there's an accent wall. Sometimes, you know, a lot of flippers these days are doing an accent wall, and the predominant color is this navy blue, which is very popular. What we did was we mimicked the cabinets on the far side of the house that are in the kitchen, and we put it's called fawn brindle color, gray color on the walls, or on the accent wall. So it sort of creates a balance between the living room and the kitchen, which is not that far away. So we brought this lovely Grecian Ivory into the dining room, but a little something different in the dining room that we did. Well, there's a couple things actually. So when I first walked in this room, it was big and it was open. There was a doorway, a 36-inch opening doorway. And we knew we wanted to open this up. It needed to be opened up to the kitchen area because the kitchen is kind of a showstopper in this house, and I'll tell you why in a second. But one thing that was really critically important, I believe, these downtown townhouses really need a powder room. It's worth its weight in gold, and you know, I would never buy a property that didn't have a powder room. So we put a powder room. Hi, Stephen. We're filming. Just so you know, you might be in the film. So we put the powder room, and what's nice about the location of the powder room is that it leaves room on this side to do what we're going to do here is a little wine cabinet. So there will be shelves in here and room for a wine cabinet, just a little something different. And this is the kind of thing, this is kind of what I call nuance that really sets this project apart from all the other flips. A lot of these townhouses are the same old thing. It's a living room, dining room, kitchen. So what they did was they opened up this doorway, which was a big deal, wasn't it, Brandon? It was. They were very concerned because it's a load-bearing wall, and this was a brick wall. I think it's a 2 courses thick brick wall. They had to put a header in, which is not an easy job, nor is it a very cheap job, but it's really important. Excuse me, because it opens up this space in a really nice way. And adding this little area of granite is, I think, perfect for, it can be a serving area, it can be a little work area, you could put a stool up, it could be a conversation area, serving area. So in these houses, the more opportunity for a little storage is always a very welcome thing, especially when you're trying to sell a property and then say, look, there's not only great cabinetry, but there's lots of workspace. Another thing that we did in here is we added to make sure that people realize that this is a dining room, we created something a little bit different from the living room by putting the chair rail, and they added a nice little bead, which is reminiscent of the other architecture in the house. This is probably like a 1920s townhouse. So from the chair rail down, it's white, and from the chair rail up, it's our Grecian ivory. Again, it creates a really cozy atmosphere in here, and just a little bit of nuance and detail in some of these areas. So the molding, the counters, and the colors, the little storage area, the wine bar, the powder room. Let's take a look at the powder room. It's a little small space. It doesn't take much to create a powder room.
There's not a lot to see, I guess. No,
And then when we walk into the kitchen, we did a couple of things different. Here's one thing that they did that I think is absolutely fabulous. They loaded this up with cabinetry, and not only did they load it up with great cabinetry, beautiful cabinetry, it goes floor to ceiling. Leaving a soffit in a townhouse of this size just would be a waste of space, but it makes the room look so much bigger. The storage is abundant, so that's a really good thing. The other thing we did was, when I came in here, I noticed this radiator, which they're necessary, they throw off great heat, but it's kind of a stopping area. So, what do? So I suggested we create a little seating area, a little workspace here, just enough to allow for some stools, enough for a little, serving area, because it's not a huge kitchen, but that maximizes the space, I think, nicely. And there's ample room between the stove, the oven opening, and this little opening. The other big thing that we did, I felt really strongly about this backyard is adorable. Can you go walk back there? Brandy, can we just interrupt you for a second? Thank you, sorry. We have to show off the backyard. So the window was probably 10 inches shorter than what you see here now. And by opening it and bringing it down, you just get a much bigger view of that really sweet little backyard, which I think is a selling point. And when you first walk in this kitchen, it's what you're drawn to immediately. And then flanking either side with cabinetry just adds just a nice focal point to the room. I think that pretty much covers the main points that the interior designer, in this particular case, me, can add to a flip property. Just adding a few little nuances, taking an outside look, and giving a different perspective. So that's what you have. And we will follow up with finished pictures of the project when it's furnished, and we'll be sure to send those to you. Thanks.